Hello and welcome back to BallinCraig, which we're farming on at the moment. Now, this, you may recall, is the map that has a number of issues, and normally ones that would mean that I wouldn't even bother playing on the map, but because I love this map so much, I'm willing to put up with the issues and find my way around them. So as we're going out to feed the cows, you'll notice one of the more obvious issues in that when you use placeable cow paddocks like I have used on this farm, the cows, you can buy the cows will eat food, they will drink water, they will breed, they'll do everything that the placeable cows are meant to do, except they will not be visible. So for some reason they just don't visibly show up. So what I've had to do to get around that is put placeable cows in those paddocks, and I've matched it up so I've got the same number of placeable cows in the paddock as I have invisible cows, so that just so the paddocks don't look like empty paddocks, I'm going to drop food into troughs of empty paddocks sort of thing. So yeah, as we go around feeding the cows, you will notice that most of them aren't animated and they just stay perfectly still, and unfortunately that's to do with the map, but it's just one of those things I'm willing to live with in order to get play on this map in FS22. Don't know what it caught on there, maybe that gate's a slightly bigger crash, so that's what it looks like. Anyway, that's wasn't what I was going to talk about today, the downfalls of this map, because I've spoken about that in previous videos when I've played on this map. So I was actually going to speak about some stuff based on a conversation, or a couple of conversations, in one of AK's videos recently. So we'll start with the fact he was talking about taking some old PC game discs and giving them away at one of the local odd shops. I don't remember the name, whether he mentioned the name of the shop or not. It sounded like it was something along the lines of Salvation Army going to donate these old PC games. Salvation Army was talking about these old games and things. So I thought I'd start by discussing the my introduction to PC gaming, as it were, and things. So I never had a PC when I was younger. My family didn't have a lot of money, so something like that was completely out of the question. When my brother, well, one of my brothers got his first job, he did go out and buy a gaming PC, and his gaming PC was an Amstrad. I think it was called an Amstrad 264 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number combination, but there was a number combination like that. Anyway, this Amstrad had a two-tone green screen, and it had a cassette tape load only. They did make them with a CD load at that time, but that was out of my brother's price range, so he got the cheap. I think you could even get them a colour screen as an option, but again, it was outside of my brother's financial ability, so he bought the cheaper version that had the two-tone green screen and the cassette tape load. Now, what I remember very, very well about these cassette tape loads is that it took about 45 minutes to load a game, and the games weren't anything great. They weren't Farming Simulation or anything like that, so generally speaking, all the games are two-dimensional, and you generally get bored with playing them after about 10 minutes. So you took 15 minutes to load a game, but you did then only play for 10 minutes and be bored with it. I do remember all the games were two-dimensional. Like there was a two-dimensional golf one where it was all done on bird's eye view, and the golf ball was square, so it was just like a 2x2 square, I think, for the golf ball. And it was a mini golf game. And I remember another one that there were no graphics whatsoever, and it was a game in words. So like it would say things like, you have entered from the east, you could go west or south, what do you want to do? You'd type in a command like look around, and that would come up with, you see a stick on the ground and nothing else, and you could type in pick up stick, and it would respond with, you have picked up the stick. And you go go south or whatever, but there were no graphics whatsoever. It was all just words like that, and you kind of had to draw a map as you went of which directions you went and how many moves you did in each direction to be able to keep track of where you were and things. Now, as you can see, I've got the vineyard planted here now that I told you I was going to plant in this field. Now, I'm not planning on actually growing and harvesting and things the grapes here. I want this to be overrun, run-down vineyard, so I'm going to let the grass grow long. We've only just come out of winter. It's the very, very beginning of autumn, and that's why the grass isn't very long at the moment. But will get quite long, and I'm not going to mow it in here because I want this to be a run-down orchard, run-down vineyard to go with the run-down orchard that I've got on the other side of the road. So this is a dairy farm that I'll be planting a few crops in. I think I've got 4 crop fields and 4 empty grass fields for mowing to get bales, and all the other fields are all cow fields. So this really is a dairy farm through and through. But I wanted the vineyard there and the apple orchard just sort of because that's what I had when I used to play this game on a much earlier version of Farming Simulator, so I wanted them there for memory's sake, but I don't want to actually have to do vineyard work or orchard work on it, so those going to be old rundown ones. So that was my first introduction to PC gaming, was this old Amstrad. I'm pretty sure it was called a 264, Amstrad 264, with a 2-tone green screen and a cassette tape load so all the games were on cassette tape. So really great games, as I'm sure you can imagine. So, and that was the only gaming PC that we ever had in our house, sort of thing, in our family home. And then I never had any game consoles or anything until after I went flatting, and until after I started working and went flatting. Never had anything like that at home. And the first game console I ever did buy was the PlayStation 1, and I think from memory, when I bought that, the PS2 had just been released when I got my first PS1. And my first PS1, I bought one off, there was a PlayStation shop, or I think it was a GameScon or something like that. So it was a shop that sold PlayStations and Xboxes and all the games and things. And because the PS2 had just come out, they had this PS1 that they'd been running in the shop, and it had basically been turned on and run every single day when the shop was open. And I might as well see those ones as well. Not to actually play the games, but just run the videos sort of thing. So when you walked into the shop, you could see game videos playing on the screens. And I got that PlayStation 1 very, very cheap because it had probably run 1,000 hours or more already. So I think probably a lot more than that, in fact. So I managed to pick it up for an absolute song, and that was my first ever game console. And then later on down the track, I got a PS2, and I even bought a PS3 further down the track after that. But I never went beyond PS3. So when I had the PS3, that was the first PlayStation, if memory serves me correctly, that Farming Simulator came out for. And they brought out Farming Simulator 13, and then a couple of years later Farming Simulator 15. And that's the only 2 that ever came out for the PS3 console. And I saw Farming Simulator 13 in the PlayStation store, and it was on one of these deal things where it was on special for a week and you could get it for a fraction of what it would normally sell for. And I sort of looked at this game. All I use my PlayStation for is, or mainly, I won't say all, but 95% of the time, all I did on it was car racing, car rallying. So that's the only games that I really wanted to play very much. And so I did an awful lot of car racing, and that's what I did on my PlayStation. And then one day, so I always keep an eye on the PlayStation Store. I think from memory, and my memory is a bit vague about this, so I apologise if I've got it slightly wrong. I'm certainly not deliberately trying to deceive any of you. I think from memory the PlayStation Store updated once a week. So every week I went in to see what the latest updates were in the PlayStation Store, and one week I saw Farming Simulator in the store on special, and it was like a summer special or something. So for 1 week it was, I don't know, 40% off or something like that. It seemed like a pretty good deal, and I thought to myself, there are occasions when I feel like playing on the PlayStation. I don't feel like setting up my steering wheel and doing car racing. So this Farming Simulator looks like it might be a bit of fun just to do on the odd occasion when I don't feel like car racing. But certainly car racing is still going to be my main thing. So I bought Farming Simulator 13, and at the time, the only time I really got to do any gaming was on a Friday night. So Friday night was gaming night, and I had a deal with my wife. So on a Friday night, she wouldn't come into the room and ask me to do any jobs. She wouldn't say, oh, can you come and get this down from that shelf, or can you do the other for me? From the moment I'd finished dinner until I was ready to go to bed, at whatever time I was ready to go to bed on a Friday night, that was my time to game. And in return for having gaming time that's uninterrupted on a Friday night from after dinner until whenever I felt like going to bed, I agreed that I wouldn't be turning on the game console on other evenings and things. So I would spend the other evenings either spending time with my wife or my son and things. So that I thought was a reasonably good deal. But anyway, I found that on a Friday night, more and more often, I wouldn't plug in my steering wheel and start doing car racing because I found Farming Simulator beginning to really take over. And so I got to the stage where probably 3 Friday nights out of the month, so 3 out of 4 or 5, I was doing farming instead of car racing. And so, yeah, it really, really took over. And so eventually I decided, well, I saw, at the time, I don't think there were very many people doing Farming Simulator videos on YouTube. I think that was a fairly new thing. And I remember I was watching Daggerwin videos, which, funnily enough, isn't someone I watch anymore because I'm not knocking him in the slightest, but he does daily videos, and because he does daily videos, they tend to get very, very repetitive after a while. And once you've watched his videos for a couple of months, you're just seeing the same thing over and over and over again all the time. So I found that it got a bit boring, which is why I stopped watching them. But I used to watch him doing his videos, and he had a PC doing Farming Simulator 13, I think he was doing as well, because I think that was the latest one. Yeah, that was definitely the latest one at the time. So he was doing Farming Simulator 13, and I was playing Farming Simulator 13. Of course, he had it on PC and I had it on PlayStation. So he had all these English maps, these mod maps, which had hedges and fences, and I just thought they were absolutely brilliant looking maps. Of course, I had nothing like that because I only had the PlayStation, so I was restricted to the maps that Giants made. And as you know, Giants maps are not terribly well detailed because they're done so anyone can play them no matter how low spec your equipment is. So yeah, Giants maps have never been overly well detailed compared to some of the mod maps that are out there, especially because you had maps like this was back in Bullet Bill's heyday and things like that, where you were getting for PC maps made by him, and they were just incredible maps. So eventually I decided that I would sell my PlayStation 3 and use the money to finance the purchase of a PC, a gaming PC. And I've still actually got that same gaming PC to this day. So this was a number of years ago now, probably we're talking 8 years ago now. So my gaming PC, I got it made specially for me, and I basically told them what stuff I wanted included in it, and I gave them the specs of the games that I wanted to play, which was Farming Simulator 13 and Farming Simulator 15, basically, and I think 17 was on the horizon at that stage. So I said, I want to be able to play that at very, very high specs as well. So when I got this PC made for myself 8 years ago, it was a very, very high-end PC in terms of it would play pretty well anything that was released 8 years ago, and it certainly played Farming Simulator with everything turned up full. And even now I'm playing FS22 here, and I've got everything turned up full, and it's running without any problems, without any glitches. But of course, Farming Simulator isn't actually a game that uses a lot of PC processing power. So I think if I tried to do, say, I don't know, some modern flight sim or something like that on this PC that I've got, it may not handle it very well. It may just decide, no, you're asking too much of me, sort of thing. But it's certainly still going strong for what I wanted it for. I have had to replace a couple of bits over the last 8 years as they wore out, but it's basically still pretty much the same computer as I got made for me 8 years ago. And that's how I came into, so that was my introduction to PC gaming, and also my introduction to Farming Sim. Now, the other reason that I wanted to talk about this today is because AK mentioned in one of his videos that he was talking about Transport Fever, I think he said the name of the game was, and he mentioned that he only ever played it really for the trains, because that's the bit that he was more interested in. He wasn't so interested in the planes or the trucks. And so I thought I'd mention that one of the things that, I don't know, would be on my wish list, that I don't think it'll ever happen, but it would certainly be on my wish list. You notice I've redone the ground under these static cows in these sheds now. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. I own, for this game, for this PC, because I bought a number of games on Steam, and a lot of them I bought back in the days when they used to have bundle stars. And with bundle stars, you could buy 6 to 8 games, and it cost about $6 American, I think it was, by 6 or 8 games. They were all normally older games, but they were bundled up into packages by genre. So, like, for example, you'd buy 6 to 8 car racing games, and when you bought them, what they did is they sent you the codes for them in Steam. So what you did is you logged onto your Steam account and you entered these codes, and then those games appeared, and you could download them at will. Of course, the good thing about Steam is you don't have to download a game straight away. You can just leave it in your library, and maybe you'll never ever download it, but if you want to one day in the future, it's there, you can just go in and download it. And so a lot of the games I own on Steam, I've never ever played. I simply bought them because, like when it comes to car racing, for example, I could get 6 car racing games for $6 US. Well, that was cheaper than what the one game I really wanted was. So I'd buy it just because there was one game in that bundle that I wanted. The other 5 I might never ever have played. But the two, so yeah, AK was talking about playing Transport Fever and playing with trains and that. And one of the games I bought was Train Simulator. And I must admit, I really, really love the graphics of it, and I really, really love the idea of it. The problem that I find, and this is just for me, the problem is there's an awful lot of different button combinations to remember, and like diesel trains are completely different to drive from steam trains, which are completely different to drive from electric trains, and I'm sure all of that's highly realistic. So I'm sure steam trains, electric trains and diesel trains are not all the same as each other in terms of how you drive them. But for someone like me who would only want to play the game casually because farming is my main thing, it's just, there's too many buttons to remember, and so it's not the kind of game you can just pick up and play for an hour or two and then put back down and forget about for a month until you're ready to pick it up and play it again for an hour or two in a month's time. It's just, it doesn't really work that way. And I must admit, I do not own any flight simulator games, but I've had a look at some of these Microsoft Flight Simulator games, and they look to me to be the same. Very, very complicated, and you've got to be really keen on playing it, so it's not going to be good for a casual gamer who just wants to pick it up and play very, very occasionally and then put it down again and forget about it. And I do actually remember back when I had, I think it was the PS1 or the PS2, it was one of those ones, I had a World War... Actually, I can't even remember if it was World War One or World War Two. I think it might have been World War One flight sim. And when you loaded this game, it gave you a choice of two different control styles. And one was a fairly arcadey style, and one was a more serious style. So with the arcadey one, if you moved the joystick to the left or the right, it would turn the plane that way, and it would automatically tilt the wings of the plane as you were turning it, so you didn't have to tilt the plane and turn the plane as two separate functions simultaneously to get the plane to turn. You just moved the joystick from one side to the other, and it did that on its own. And that I quite enjoyed, because for someone who's not really into flight sims but loves the idea of them, and I must admit I love the idea of being able to fly all around the world and land at different airports sort of thing, so the concept of doing that I absolutely love. It's not the kind of game I'm going to play often enough that I'm going to be able to remember all the different controls to work everything. So I must admit that both with the train sim and with say Microsoft Flight Simulator, I really, really wish that you could load them up and choose... What am I getting stuck on? Oh, I must be a branch there or something. There we go, it's cleared now. I really, really wish they had a arcade version, so when you load the game, you could choose whether you want to have realistic play or whether you want to have arcade play, which still has the same graphics, still has the same options in terms of what planes you can fly, what airports you're going to land at, or what trains you can drive and where you want to drive them and things, but they could be different in terms of the arcade version, I suppose, could just make things a bit simpler. So like the trains basically have a throttle and a brake and not have to worry about other things. I mean, you'd still make it like a train insofar as, putting on the brake, it wouldn't work like the brake on a car. You'd still, take a while to slow down, so you still have to get used to when to step on the brake in order to stop in the right place for the station or something. But just simplifying the controls a lot like that. So, you pull into a platform, the doors automatically open, you don't need to worry about trying to open doors on carriages and remembering how to do that. You don't need to have one thing to control the brakes of the engine, then another thing entirely to control the brake of the wagons or the coaches behind. So yeah, I would personally really, really love it if both the train simulator game and one of the flight simulator games had a more casual... arcade's probably not the right word, because I still want the kind of realistic look to it. I don't want to have arcade looks or anything, I still want it to look realistic, and as I say, I still want the same sort of options of the same planes or the same trains and what have you, but just a more casual gamer option for the controls, where it just simplifies things so you don't need to perhaps remember quite so many things. And I've got to admit, it actually occurs to me that perhaps this farming game, they could do the same thing. I mean, I love this game, I play it all the time, so I remember what controls do what. None of it leaves my mind, but there are a lot of controls in this farming game as well, a lot of things to remember, how you do this and how you do that. And perhaps if they had a casual gamer option for the controls that just simplified everything a wee bit more, so you didn't have to remember so many different buttons, for people that aren't as addicted to it as I am, it would make this game more playable for them. So yeah, that was just my thoughts on flight sims and train sims in particular. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my idea there, but I'll let you all go now because I notice this video has now been 25 minutes long. Okay, thanks. Bye.